You know what's crazy? Back in 1894, catching a glimpse of a motion picture meant going to a kinetoscope parlor where by dropping 25 cents, mind you, that's nearly $10 today, you could peer into a massive wooden box and for about 2 or 3 minutes, watch a handful of 10 to 15 second stuttery and grainy films. Fast forward a bit, we now have the ability to not only watch essentially any film or video in existence on an ultra bright high definition screen, but can also capture that video in 4K, 6K, even 8K resolution, all within a device inside of our pockets. I think some of us fail to take into account just how far we've come with capturing and displaying video. The symbiotic relationship between cameras and displays has continued to thrive for decades. Advances in one area have led to advances in the other, each step bringing us closer and closer to that perfect translation from idea to image. But at some point not long ago, we, the audience, reached a point where convenience trumped quality. It's like we choose to watch and consume our content on smaller and smaller screens. This creates kind of an interesting dichotomy for people like myself who certainly appreciate the convenience of smaller screens, but who also strive to create immersive and cinematic experiences for my viewers. I spend time, money, a whole lot of energy capturing my work on cameras capable of 16-bit RAW, over 15 stops of dynamic range, cinema lenses, spending hours color grading and perfecting the image. But I know that the vast majority of my audience will literally not be able to view that work in the way I intended it to be seen. And I know I'm not alone in that. A few months ago, I was listening to an interview on NPR with John Papsadera. He's a really well-known casting director, especially for his work with Christopher Nolan on a lot of his major films. It was really fascinating, really insightful to hear about their process and how they work together in creating these stories. But there were a few things that really stood out to me about this. When it came to Batman specifically, there was one aspect of their casting process that really set this movie apart from all of the other superhero movies, especially the older, quirky 90s Batman films.
Let's kick some ice.
You see, Nolan had this goal in mind of the audience being able to have more of a real dialogue with the actor. So they swore by testing each actor in the mask.
We tested Christian, we tested Jake Gyllenhaal, we tested Cillian Murphy, we tested Ian Bailey, and we tested Josh Jackson. And all of those guys had different strengths and weaknesses. We were in that thought that this is an origin story. We had to test actors in the mask.
According to Papsadera, it's all about being able to hold the camera's gaze. So in order to test this aspect, they completed the casting process by doing actual screen testing. It sounds kind of simple, right? But this meant actually recording scenes with the actors and then heading into a theater to review them to gauge their viewership through an actual cinematic experience.
And it wasn't until we screen tested them and then watched it in the theater with the studio, and all things pointed to Christian.
They did this instead of the classic live auditions or reviewing tape submissions or, just relying on a producer's specifications. In other words, they wanted to cast for the medium that this film would actually be enjoyed in, the big screen.
Look, at the end of the day, that's the medium that we're casting for. What you want to see is what happens on the screen and what happens with an actor in front of the camera.
This strategy alone allowed them a better chance at fulfilling Nolan's idea of the Batman. and thus we got Christian Bale. So here we have one of the most well-known and successful filmmakers of all time leaning into this idea of thinking about the medium by which his work would be consumed. And it played a fundamental role in his creative process, ultimately leading to one of the most successful movie franchises of all time. Now, of course, we can't all test and view our work in a theater on a giant screen, but that doesn't mean that our only resource should be the 5-inch little screen in our pocket. So you're probably like, we get it. Big screens are important. We've all seen a movie on a TV or gone to a theater. What's your point? To which I would say, just one sec, I'm getting there. This thing is the Sony Bravia A95K, and it is without a doubt probably one of the most insane pieces of tech that I've had the privilege of living with. TVs historically have always kind of just been, well, TVs. Like, you probably have one in your living room. The quality has never really been like mind-blowing. You know, like I think that the most notable improvements in TV history, at least to me, are probably like 4K and HDR. When those became a standard, it was like, well, that's pretty cool, I guess. So what does this thing do different? Well, a lot. Now, I have a good relationship with Sony, but this video is not sponsored. They asked me if I wanted to try out this TV in my video editing workflow and hear some of my thoughts, and so I figured I'd share them with you guys. Perfect blacks for a long time were the craziest thing in a TV. Like when OLED technology first came out, contrast was like insane, but this is qd-oled, which is basically the latest generation of OLED screens. I'm talking color quality that can rival even some of the best professional color monitors on the market. So I'm literally not kidding when I say that the color, the richness, the contrast is unlike anything I've ever seen before. It covers 100% of sRGB, but also 100% of DCI-P3, which, in case you don't know those standards, that basically rivals my Apple Pro XDR display in my office. It's a $5,000 32-inch monitor. I don't even know how that makes sense. It's a TV. Working in the professional video industry in post-production often requires a pretty specialized type of equipment. Apple pretty much changed the game. M1 Max laptop has kind of changed my life as a video editor. However, with displays in particular, it used to be that if you wanted industry standard for color sensitive work, you were left with a reasonably small range of options with usually pretty outdated designs and features. Now, okay, yeah, at first the idea of a 65-inch TV in a video editing workflow may not sound all that, well, practical. I mean, yeah, let's face it, not everybody has the room or the wall space in an office to use a TV as a monitor. But after everything that we've learned about the evolution of cinema and theater, the reason starts to become pretty obvious why in a coloring suite, for instance, a TV like this is pretty much standard in that viewing experience. Coloring is like one of the final post-production steps. So it becomes critical to really be able to see the work the way that it's probably gonna be shown on the big screen. A chance to tap into that more visceral viewing experience that a computer monitor or display just typically can't provide. Having a setup like this in our living room with, of course, the HT A5000 soundbar, the RS5 rear speakers, and the subwoofer, it's a combo that not only creates some incredible nights of entertainment, but also can act as a secondary monitor for my video editing and color grading. I'm often working on my laptop on the couch, and so it's easy enough to just come sit here at the dining table, connect my MacBook simply with an HDMI cable and I get a full 65-inch 4K 120Hz display with near perfect color accuracy for my color sensitive workflows. Now, I'm sure I'll get some comments from you guys being like, well, how practical can it really be? You know, working from a display in your living room. Well, to my surprise, the qd-oled technology really shines here with its super impressive anti-reflection. I mean, I really have absolutely no issue being able to see and utilize this display even at the brightest point of the day. I mean, you can still see some reflections on the screen, but the contrast and near 1000 nits of peak brightness that this thing can create, literally not a single issue. But obviously, if you need the most accurate possible image, then yeah, you should head it into a dark and controlled environment and make sure you have neutral light. No screen technology is going to replace that. Now, look, guys, I'm not sharing all of this with you to be like, you need to go out and buy the highest end TV right now. But I do think that it's easy for us to get caught up in conversations talking about what camera we shoot with or what software we edit with. And sometimes we forget that the real end goal for a lot of us in filmmaking or storytelling is to give your audience an amazing viewing experience. And you don't need to be Christopher Nolan to do this. All it takes is a willingness to reconsider how you want your audience to consume and appreciate your artistic vision. So if you have never edited on a TV or a large screen before, I highly suggest giving it a try. Check out the A95K or the newer A95L if you guys are interested. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.